Good morning and welcome to Coffee with the Rich. Coffee with the Rich is brought to you by the American Warrior Society and the American Warrior Show, America's #1 self-defense podcast. And boy, do we have a great show for you today. We are joined by Dianna Muller. She is a retired police officer from Tulsa Police Department. She is founder of the DC Project, national champion, 3-gun shooter, and many, many other things. We're excited to have Dianna on the show. In just a second, I'm going to ask her to introduce herself. But before I do, folks, you know I've got a setup, so give me 1 second. All right. Good morning, Dianna. How are you?
Good morning. I'm up early.
Yes, you are. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to the 21 people that have joined us already. Folks, please like and share. You're definitely going to want to tune into this show today. And if you're watching the replay, thank you for joining me. Once again, my name is Rich Brown, former police officer, retired Marine Corps officer, and co-founder, co-host of the American Warrior Society and the American Warrior Show. And today, Dianna Muller is our guest. Dianna, so tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thanks for having me on. I am a 22-year retired police officer from Tulsa, Oklahoma. I retired in 2014, basically to pursue a career as a professional shooter, because I really didn't know that that was a thing until I started shooting as a hobby and then got some sponsorships and then realized that I was spending just as much time there promoting my sponsors and shooting that I was policing. So I made the transition in 2014. And I've been doing that ever since. And during that time, I have been put on my heart actually to basically advocate for the Second Amendment. So that was something I hadn't planned on doing, but it's definitely taking up a lot of my time these days.
Well, and I'll tell you right now, speaking for the 2A community, thank God for the work that you're doing. We really, really appreciate it. And now it's as important as ever. Let's see who's on the show this morning, Dianna. So far, we got 34 folks watching us live. Jared out there in Montana is on. Jody is on. Good morning. Will Parker, good morning, sir. Jeff is on. Donald is on. Coin number 1499 out there in the beautiful state of Texas. And if you're wondering what a coin number is, then check out the American Warrior Society. By joining the American Warrior Society, you get a serialized coin as well as access to the training vault. So please check out what Mike Seeklander and I have for you there. Kevin Parker is on. Robert Thornberry is on. Sydney Stein is on. Good morning. Please like and share. We have an amazing show for you today. As you can tell from Dianna's background, this is top shelf. It's top shelf stuff today, folks. You're lucky to have her.
My dad's background. I met my mom and dad. My dad passed earlier my dad passed earlier this year, and I've been spending as much time up here as I can. But Fox News has actually this has been on Fox News before. I was interviewed a couple of times right after he passed, and I hope they appreciate the guns and the military garb.
Yeah, we love it. Thank you for your dad's service. So what got you into law enforcement, Dianna?
Dad, he was actually, he did a little bit of time in the military when he graduated high school, but then he went on to the Missouri State Highway Patrol. And he spent, I don't know how many years he was at until he went into the insurance business, but I always remember having a picture of my dad in uniform. And it wasn't at our house, it was at my grandma's house, my mom's mom. And he had his picture of uniform. And that was really between that picture and then his insurance office was right across the alleyway from our police department. So he was always in the police department. It was just like the backyard. So I had a very close relationship with police for a long time.
You know, I have 2 daughters, and neither one of them has chosen to follow in my footsteps in any way. So
that's a good thing these days.
I think you might be right. And you alluded a little bit to what got you, how you kind of took that journey into being a full-time professional shooter. But what got you into competitive shooting to begin with?
Well, my father, when I was 14, 15, 16, we went deer hunting. And finally, I think my 16-year-old year, I got my first deer. I had no auditory exclusion, so my ears were horribly ringing. I had killed Bambi's mom, and I didn't like getting things. I don't like getting the frog in science class. So hunting just wasn't my thing. And Dad was okay with that. I think he was getting on up in age and a little bit softer in his heart anyway. And then that turned our attention towards the shooting sports. So we started going to Barry, Illinois, which is a couple hours down the road, and doing some USPSA pistol type stuff. And that's what got me introduced to it. Before I left the house permanently, I remember doing some law enforcement type stuff. I had early on, like when I was probably 19, 20 years old, I was a reserve for our sheriff's department, and I could participate in law enforcement shoots. So I got to do a little bit of work with shotguns, but none with rifles per se. I don't even know when rifles came into my life, honestly. We started competing. And then once I graduated college and I went to Tulsa Police Department, I went down there for horses. Horses was our main hobby, and I was a barrel racer. So I barrel raced for about the first 18 years of my adult life, and had a farm and horses, and that's what kept me busy. But when the United States Shooting Academy opened in Tulsa, Oklahoma in 2008-ish, I thought, Dianna, you should go back to a match, just stay behind your gun for work purposes. So I started shooting PSA, just dabbling in it, but I fell in love with the people that shoot were so much more. I don't know. So for 3 years, I made a very for a transition, I'd say, into 100% horses to 100% guns. And it took about 3 years for me to sell all of my horses, all of my everything I had collected for my adult life. I'd sold it and moved to town and finished my police career, and then kept on going with shooting.
You know, I wonder if I didn't meet you at United States Shooting Academy years ago. Brian Hill and Tom Fee and Mike brought me in.
Yeah, probably.
Many, many times to help get that thing up and running. So tell me about the DC project. How did that come about? And explain what it is, Dianna.
Okay, so the DC project is Women for Gun Rights. So if you're aware of the red shirts of the Moms Demand Action, we are the opposite of that. So we support our gun rights, and we think that education, not legislation, is the key to safe family, protecting your families and being safe yourself. So that came about, and I had no idea. This was not on my radar either. 2015, myself, my husband, Ryan Muller, and then Jerry Michalik, some guy that shoots, and his daughter Lena, some girl that shoots. We were all at a match on the East Coast, and we had another one the next weekend. So we like to do things that are, tourist-y. And a friend of mine said, "Do you want to meet your legislator?" And I was like, "I guess that's what you do when you're in Washington, D.C." So we did that, but it was during that conversation I was like, "Hey, is there something that we should be doing as professional shooters to reach out to these legislators that are really making some horrible decisions that affect us, affect our entire country, based on misinformation or lies?" And it was there that I really started massaging that idea of visiting our legislators. So I figured women, I was from Oklahoma. I could only I only had standing in Oklahoma. So I would need all these other states. And I was like, there's not professional shooters in all these other states that I know. So I'll give this to God, because the whole plan has come together more beautifully than I had ever envisioned. But now we have the diversity that really represents America all across the United States, and it's women speaking about gun rights, which can be a little bit stronger on the Second Amendment, since we don't fit the stereotype.
No, you don't fit the stereotype, and that's amazing. We need that voice, because I think not only is gun rights, I think, akin to human rights, but it's also women's rights. I think you would agree with that, wouldn't you, Dianna?
Absolutely. We use that tagline a lot.
Good. Yeah, I think that's incredibly important. Thank you to the 50 folks that are joining us right now. Please take a quick moment to share. As you can tell, we've got a lot to go into this morning, and you're not going to want to miss this. I want to talk about something. When you testified before Congress, was that as part of the DC project or something else?
It was because of the DC project. It was because of the relationships that we had formed on Capitol Hill with National Shooting Sports Foundation and the legislators. So yeah, that was a heavy weight on my shoulders. It's about this time last year, actually.
Yeah, I imagine so. I tell you, I watched that again last night in preparing for today's show. I mean, you were amazing. So my hat's off to you.
Thing, like 3 hours, or just the part where I said I will not comply?
About 6 minutes of it. Let's put it there. Let's be honest here. But yes, where you famously told Congress to their face, I will not comply. Can you tell us a little bit about how that came to pass and the context with which you said that, Dianna?
Sure. So I did say I will not comply with but let me back up, because I had, like I said, it was a heavy weight on my shoulders, and I had prepared for weeks. A 5-minute, everybody gets a 5-minute opener. So I knew that I had 5 minutes to speak. And trying to squish down everything that I thought was important was really difficult. But my opening statement, if you can find that, I was like, we knocked that out of the park. And I say we because I had help and people listened to me speak it, and that it was awesome. We also want to give a shout out to the DC Project girls that actually met me there, because we knew from past experience or just our own experiences that those red shirts would be in the gallery, and we knew that to expect them. And so that's when this whole Teal for 2A kind of campaign movement started, and we all got shirts that they educate, not legislate, and then we put blazers over them and look a little bit professional. But they got there at the crack of dawn, and they sat right behind me where I was going to be sitting. And so every time the camera was on me, this teal color and this educate, not legislate was behind me. So that worked out great, and we've kind of carried this teal thing into, let's make teal the counter to red. So got through my opening speech, and there's some gamesmanship that I was unaware of during these hearings. I hadn't watched enough hearings to prepare very well, but when somebody has their time, we had our 5 minutes, everybody on the panel, there were 5 antis, and there was 2. Amy Swear from the Heritage Foundation was the only other pro voice. And I can't remember where I was going. So the gamesmanship. If somebody spoke to you or asked you a question, then basically they were passing you the ball and you could run with it. But then I realized, okay, I have to wait. So I would write down my answer, but then I was like, I couldn't remember who said what to get there. So it took me about an hour and a half to figure out how to make sure I organized what I was going to say to whom. And that was kind of a shock. But when I said I will not comply, basically somebody threw me the ball. In one of it's the Republicans are on your right and the Democrats are on your left. And it was one of the Republicans, Andy Biggs from Arizona, had thrown me the ball, and I was just running with it. So I was telling them, basically pleading with them, do not make me a felon, because this will make me a felon. It will make me choose, like I've already chosen, to be, to either get rid of my bump stocks or be a felon. Now you're telling me that you want to pass a bill that's going to make me a felon. So in my mind, I was like, I will not comply with an unconstitutional. I feel like that's unconstitutional based on the decision. And I will, but I didn't really say it that way. I just said it kind of like, I will not comply. And that came about because there was a gentleman in the gallery about an hour before that stood up, and he had a copy of the Constitution in his hand, and he said, I want to testify. And he was, I couldn't hear what he was saying, everything he was saying, but it went on for so long that I finally turned around and looked at him, and he had a shirt on that says "We will not comply" or something. It was their Patriot Picket guy's shirt. And so I said, like that guy that got escorted out earlier, I will not comply if you pass this. So, and I immediately looked up at Jerry Nadler's face, and he was like, his jaw was on the ground, and I thought, maybe I shouldn't have said that, but I was just speaking from the heart.
I love it. Yeah, I absolutely love it. And for those of us that have traveled around the world, we know that, nowhere else do we have the enshrined God-given right to keep and bear firearms. And once you lose it, they're never coming back. So
No.
I completely agree with you 100%. Dianna, what does the current state of unrest, and we're going to switch gears here for just a second, because I think this morning I want to take advantage of the fact that you're not only a national champion 3-gun shooter, you're not only the founder of the DC Project, but you've spent more than 2 decades as a law enforcement officer in these states united. And I want to take full advantage of the incredible background that you bring to today's show to talk about some of the unrest that's going on today and how it fits in, and your take on everything, Dianna. So what does the current state of unrest have to teach us in terms of racial justice and equality, if anything?
Well, make a note to go back to the DC Project, because I want to tell everybody about how it works and how they can plug in to be a part. But I'll be glad to shift gears and go into what does this have to do with racial justice. I don't know. I feel like as a police officer, I spent 22 years on the streets, shoulder to shoulder, and I don't see the systemic racism that I'm being told exists. I understand that I don't understand it from a person of color's perspective. I don't have that lens. All I have is the lens that I see things through. And from my experience as a minority myself, when I came into the police department, immediately upon graduation of the academy, I got brought in as a minority. It's a bunch of minorities. Got brought in and asked a bunch of questions. And basically it was like, how do we make it easier? What was your experience like? How do we make it easier, basically, is what they were asking. And I was like, you're offending me because you think that I'm not capable of meeting a threshold. And I was like, I don't want to work with people who can't meet that threshold. So these liberal policies of trying to lower the bar, the standardization is just, it's offensive to me. And I would think it would be offensive to anybody that you think that I have to, that I'm not good enough to do it based on the standard that exists. So that was my experience, is that throughout my career, I saw specifically Black officers being given things that weren't earned. I can name names. I can name names of people who were on a list. They used to have a promotional list that like the top 20 were qualified, so they could pick anybody in that list that they wanted to. That was unfair enough. But then early on in my career, he's still there. They dipped down to number 23, skipping over number 21 and 22. They didn't even include them in the pot. And then they promoted number 23 first. And that was because of the skin. And that made me angry. And then just, people getting assignments and things like that, I feel like there was no systemic racism against Black. It was the discrimination for Black and minorities that existed in my police department.
Yeah, you bring up a great point, and this idea of systemic racism, really, honestly, the only systemic racism that I'm aware of, and I heard someone else bring this up, is affirmative action, which disenfranchises, the majority in favor of minority applicants. So if anything is systemic racism, maybe it's that. I don't know. I'll leave that up to people that are far smarter than I. But your point, Dianna, about lowering the bar to increase inclusion. I don't know that that's a good strategy for those that are out there enforcing the laws. What do you think?
Well, absolutely not. That's the head scratcher. As I'm scratching my head, I'm like, I don't understand how you think that defunding the police is going to make them any better at their jobs. They're already overtaxed, underpaid, and understaffed. So this feel good, this mob mentality of going with the flow and being angry and violent and just, I don't know. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And I'm hoping that it doesn't make any sense to enough people that are either registered or haven't registered to go register and to vote. Because if you look at the totality of the circumstances of what's going on in America, these liberal cities are burning. And I hate to make things, left or right or Republican or Democrat. I think the whole system is broken, but you can't dispute the fact that the liberal policies of not holding people accountable is really the problem here. And, you can go back to the Parkland shooting. I don't know if you've interviewed Meadow, what's her last name? His dad, Andy Pollock. He wrote a book. He didn't do the mob mentality thing and say, oh, it's the gun's fault. We have to have gun restrictions. He dug into really what happened. And that shooter had the police out to his house at least 30 times. The school was well aware of his actions and the things that he'd done and the things that he had said. And you can commit 3 misdemeanors in Parkland before they call the police within the school system. And that's where Andy Pollock was very, very insightful to look past the feel-good answers and get down to the nitty-gritty. It's our school systems and it's our liberal thinking when it comes to holding people accountable.
Yeah, to your point about just something dawned on me as I was processing what you were saying about this idea that to level the playing field, we kind of skew the playing field, which obviously is an illogical argument. I think most of the listeners and viewers, so they would agree with that. But I remember when I was a gunnery sergeant, we had an issue where in a command I was in where they brought in equal opportunity folks from headquarters Marine Corps. And I looked around at when they arrived for the conference that we had. I'm like, they're all African American. Okay, there needs to be some diversity of thought, some diversity on this team, right? So I remember when I became an officer, the All Marines message came out and said, okay, we're seeking nominations to be on the, Marine Corps Equal Opportunity Committee. I'm like, absolutely. And then I go down, let's see if I have everything I need. Okay. You need to be this, and this. You need to have so much time on station, so much rank, all the little wickets. I'm like, yep, I've got all this. And then it said, only seeking African-American nominees. I'm like, well, that's not equal opportunity. It's this weird doublespeak we have going on in America right now where we say one thing and we mean something totally different. It's a strange time.
You're fighting for one thing, but actually supporting something else.
Yeah.
You say you want equality, but that's not really what you mean.
Well, even that, it's like, what kind of equality are we talking about? Equality of opportunity or equality of outcome? Because we might be able to give you equality of opportunity if you can meet the standard, but you may never achieve
capitalism versus socialism right there. Capitalism versus socialism. Equal opportunity or equality of outcome. And what they want is the equality of outcome.
Yeah. And we can't have that because everybody's different.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you to the 48 folks that are still on with us this morning and everyone that watched today and in the coming weeks for the replay. Please like and share. Take a brief moment. Dr. John Adine is on out there in San Antonio, Texas. Yeah, we're lucky to have John. He's coin number 1790. Gerald out there in Oregon. It's very early where you are, sir. Alan Kelly, a retired state trooper in Virginia, behind the lines in occupied Virginia, if you will. Yeah, we're going to talk about that here in just a moment, Alan. What's going on in your place? Let's talk about the DC project, Dianna. You had something you wanted to talk about that real quick.
Well, I wanted to explain to everybody kind of what we do, and we are the anti-red shirts. But what we do, what we started doing is I gathered 50 women, one from every state. That's all I could manage, honestly. And then we went to Washington, D.C. once a year. For the past 4 years, we've been going to Washington, D.C. And this year, COVID kind of worked to our advantage because we canceled our trip, but starting about the beginning, well, actually it was starting about Virginia. I was like, holy cow, we're losing our state battles. So we have to push down to the state. So it took me 4 years to kind of get my feet on the ground. But then this year we have pushed out to the state level. So now our doors are open. We're inviting women to come in. It doesn't cost anything. It's probably a mistake, but that's just where we're at right now. And to come in and start strategizing, basically, about how we can be that counter visual and that counter voice to Moms Demand Action. But when we go to Washington, D.C., a lot of the girls that have never been, they'll come in and they'll be terrified about these meetings and things like that. And I was like, and I was a little intimidated at first, but literally it's so easy. It's like going in and meeting a person, a human. And odds are you may not even get to meet the member at first, but that's okay. That's you ask for the member or somebody who handles their Second Amendment stuff, because there is one person in their office that handles all that stuff, and you creating a relationship with them is just important or more than you creating a relationship with the member. So we're not offended if we don't get to speak to the member right off the bat. I'll speak to the janitor. Our message is for everyone. So we do these meetings. We break up into small groups. If you've ever been to a shooting competition, we break up into squads and everybody shoots, so it's a little bit more manageable. That's what we do. We break up into our little squads of 4 to 6 women. And where I put the most time into strategizing is if I've got a Connecticut, really tough states, I'll make sure that they have a story that, like Melissa Schuster, she was at her folks' house to pick up something and somebody came to the door, ended up kicking in the door, asking for money. He stabbed her 17 times. He drugged her upstairs, raped her, and left her for dead. She did not die, and she has come and told her story and how she doesn't ever want to be a victim again, and that the firearms is the big equalizer. We've got really powerful stories like that, and like I said, we're so diverse that we want to show the diversity of gun ownership. It's not somebody that looks like you. I usually say old white guy, but I think we're almost there, old white guy.
Right.
But that it's not as hard as it sounds, and it's not as intimidating, and you don't have to go to Washington, D.C. to visit the same folks that we visit there. They have offices in their districts. So, of course, the senators, you're probably going to have to travel a little bit more, but your representatives should be right in your backyard. It should be easily worth. And I've been listening to all these, influence and books, and they say that a visit from a constituent is much more important than a lobbyist. So I can't overstate how important it is for somebody to reach out and have a relationship with them. Intentionally want them to know what your name is when it comes to Second Amendment type stuff, and whether they're pro or anti, they need to know that you exist. So now go to dcproject.info for more information and /join if you're interested in getting a teal shirt. I should have worn the teal one. What am I thinking?
I love that shirt you're wearing right now. I love it.
And these are for sale on our website as well.
We have a link to Dianna's website in the show notes today, so please go and check that out. It's everything that Dianna and her husband Ryan are up to. So check out everything that they got going on, because they got it all going on, folks.
Seems like it.
Yeah. Hey, let's get some comments here. TC Fuller, Dr. Fuller, a retired FBI agent, good friend of mine, says the inversion of John Stuart Mill's tyranny of the majority, current media, both mainstream and social, seems to be giving the traditional power of the majority to those who are merely the loudest. The ideal of the quiet, hardworking professional appears to be working against many of us. Good point.
Yep, and that's kind of another reason why I think the DC Project is important, is just to, not that we employ their tactics, we don't yell or corner or be rude, and we don't do that, but we are being seen and heard. So, yeah, but you know what? I'll tell your audience this too, all 46 people who are watching or whatever, but we're looking for our own Bloomberg. I mean, Bloomberg supports Moms Demand Action to the tune of $36 million last year. I don't know what it's going to be this year, but he's pledged at least $60 million, and I think it's gone up to $100 million. So if you're looking for someone to support, the DC Project is always looking for, you know, because we have like a little bit less than $36 million is what we have.
And thank you for telling us that. I don't know if you've seen the yellow shirts that are going on right now in Portland and Seattle, the Wall of Moms. Have you seen that, Dianna?
I did see that video. Yep.
It's disturbing.
Wall of Moms.
Yeah, that are blocked. If you haven't seen it, folks, please check it out. It's linked arms behind Antifa so that Antifa can
in front
throw their bombs over the Wall of Moms.
They go between the police officers and Antifa.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Brett Parker, former law enforcement officer out there in California, has put a link in today's show notes here if you want to see Dianna's testimony in front of Congress. Let's see here. I got another question for you. What is the situation going on in Virginia right now? If you could just kind of, in a nutshell, tell everybody what's going on in Virginia, what has been going on in Virginia, and tell us also, Dianna, what does that have to say about the state of the Second Amendment right now?
Well, Virginia had basically the shot over the bow in January. Well, I guess it was the last election cycle, but January it took effect. And Trump is their governor, and basically everybody, all of those law-abiding people, they didn't show up and vote, and they figured out that they made a mistake. And after he got in and enacted a lot, or at least put up, these bills were going on in January. Hordes and hordes. I mean, now Virginia makes California and New York look like child's play. And these, the entire state, 96, 98% of their counties went sanctuary. That's when we first started hearing sanctuary counties. So the state, the people rose up afterwards, but they didn't rise up before. So that's the message going into this election cycle, is let's make sure that we don't sit on our laurels and let somebody else do our bidding when it comes to counting and thinking that we're going to be okay, because Virginia is in a place right now. They are struggling against a lot of tyrannical type stuff, and people don't like it, but that's what they voted for. So you're going to get what you vote for, and hopefully my fear is that our kids are being indoctrinated in schools. So no matter what, make sure you talk to your kids about patriotism and capitalism, because they're going to get a healthy dose all throughout school and college that America is bad, and all the things that you're seeing flower in Portland, that's what we've been planting for a very long time. So that mentality is not going to go away, even if President Trump wins again. They're still going to be there. They're still going to be angry. I suspect that they're rioting before to get their way. So I'm sure that they're going to continue rioting afterwards. So I would have hoped by now that it wouldn't have taken wildfires to stop the riots, but evidently that's what it did. I was hoping that the people of Portland would think that burning down your city was a bad thing and closing your businesses and things like that. But that didn't happen for the first 100 and some odd days. So it took wildfires, I guess.
Well, and I've said it on this show before, in probably the last 2 years, I've been up and trained the law enforcement officers in Portland as well as Seattle. Phenomenal men and women doing amazing things, and I were in those cities and they were peaceful, and to see them completely destroyed by an ideology is something I didn't know that I would see in my lifetime. So it's amazing. And to your point about Virginia and not showing up to vote, Dianna, I think that's an incredible point, because I think a lot of gun owners think, this is a slippery slope. It'll just slowly slide. We'll be able to stop it. Well, we saw that within one election cycle. just one, when it can all go away. So it's
well, to that point, we can complain about not voting, but somebody has to run. A lot of these people are not being even challenged. So I would encourage anybody listening that if explore your heart and see if that's something that you can consider doing, or finding somebody that you feel like has the same, that has that heart to do that. Because it's really important to run. We as conservatives, I think we sit on we're like live and let live, but now we have let other people that don't share our visions and don't share our morals lead us, and starting with our school boards and all the way up to federal offices. So yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, to your point, going back to the governor Northam, I think it is, in Virginia. I think we have to take these people at their word. When they say they want to do these things, we need to really mobilize, because they're telling us very explicitly what they want.
Shouldn't be surprised.
It shouldn't be surprised. Yeah, I had someone was like that was relatively supporter of maybe Black Lives Matter as a concept. It's an immutable idea, right? Black Lives Matter. We all would agree with that, right? Of course, it's almost silly to even say it. I think it's ridiculous, because all lives matter. So of course, in that vein, Black Lives Matter. But this person I was having lunch with, and I very lightly said, have you read their list of demands? They're being very specific, and they're not shy about telling you what they demand or what their mission statement is. I said, look, let's take a moment, pull your phone out, and let's read it and see if you still agree with this movement. And of course, they put their phone down and it's like shocked. We have to know what these people's aims are. And more often than not, they'll tell you exactly what their plans are.
Yeah. And the one that gets me, because they say a lot of things on their mission statement, but the one that got me was dismantling or destroying the Western prescribed nuclear family. They do not, any therapist, any person that studies a healthy human is going to tell you that two parents produces more healthy children, and they want to destroy that. And I think that, if it's just weird. I just have some really weird conversations online about people that don't, that think that that's okay, that's, a good thing. And then socialism, I can't wrap my head around anybody who's lived here. I guess they haven't traveled or listened to anybody else who's actually lived under communism or socialism about how it really works. But we have let our children down when it comes to letting them get indoctrinated, for sure. We've let our country down.
Yeah, I was having this conversation the other day with, I think it was my son. We were on a jog and we're talking about some of the key differences. I said, if you notice, like when I was growing up, we had this wall that divided Berlin. And I said, the wall wasn't to keep West Berliners out, it was to keep the East Berliners in. And he was like, well, why? Why does communism have to keep people in? I said, because they look at you and say, you're going to work at a tractor factory and your wife is going to lay bricks. And it's like, well, she doesn't want to lay bricks and I don't want to work at a tractor factory. That's communism. You don't get a vote. You get to do what you're told. And when you do that to human beings, they want to flee. That's why you need a wall. And the machine guns are pointing inward, not outward. So it's tyrannical.
Yeah,
I want to get to your, go ahead. I'm sorry, Dianna.
Our kids are missing that, for sure.
Yeah. You mentioned sanctuary counties and sanctuary cities within Virginia. Do you think that would hold up?
Well, no, I don't. I think that that's all. I mean, who as a gun owner wants to take a chance on a police officer being a sanctuary supporter or not? I mean, the law is the law. So I don't think that it would not going to support. It's just that we're not going to persecute you, not that we're not going to prosecute you.
That's a good way to put it there. I like that.
Yeah.
Dianna, in this current divisive climate, there seems to be a misunderstanding about American law enforcement. You're a retired law enforcement officer. What's the purpose of law enforcement?
Well, the law enforcement is to enforce the laws. So if you're unhappy with the laws that people are enforcing, maybe run for office and change the laws. I don't know. Maybe, one of the things that I really wish civilians would do is, instead of, especially I don't understand this BLM movement and how anybody can support it, honestly, because the vileness and the rudeness and the just without committing a crime, just the way they speak, and they get up in the front of a police officer and call them horrible names. I mean, that's just it's just not right. So before they ever commit a crime, but then it goes back to those liberal policies. You know, those police officers are being hamstrung because some of those people, I saw a guy with a stick in front of a police officer's face to face with him. I got my stick too, and jumping at him like that. And I was like, that's a crime. That is a crime. You can arrest for that, but he's not. And they don't get it. So they don't understand they don't understand what is legal, what is illegal based on current laws now. They've been handled with kid gloves for so long that they think that it's okay that's First Amendment speech is what I've been arguing about. But people don't understand how we're trained, what we're trained to do. And, you know, the George Floyd thing looked horrible. But then you go back months later after the riots and you get the totality of the circumstances and you see how many chances that George Floyd had to do what he was supposed to do to save his own life, that he has some culpability in his demise. And then beyond that, I mean, I can't really think of another instigator, another spark that I've seen that has been a bad shoot. That's just obviously a bad shoot. The whole Jacob Blake thing. I mean, look at the totality of well, he had a knife at the time. So, you know, I remember Biden and Harris both saying, just pouring fuel on the fire, you know, that he was shot in the back in front of his kids. And I mean, she's a prosecutor. She knows exactly what she's doing. They are manipulating people and they are stirring the pot and they are pouring fuel on a fire. They are not helping. They are not, you know, there's nobody that is on the mobs that the mob is going to listen to that are saying, listen, due process and the totality of the circumstances really does mean something. And when it comes to judging police officers and their use of force, there is a Supreme Court decision that talks about that. But nothing matters. All that matters is that they can take an instance and switch it to what they want it to say and then go riot. That's what matters. Truth doesn't matter.
No, the truth doesn't matter. And that's one of the things that really bothers me. You know, you have Michelle Obama with her amazing platform, and she gets out there and says incendiary things like there's an endless sea of minorities being killed, people of color being killed. I'm like, no, I can probably name almost all of them. And what I've found is when I've visited gun folks in the UK or talked to folks in South Africa, Australia, etc., they know their names as well. You know, that's surprising. They know exactly who these people are in the United States. If they know them by name and can tell me who the officers were involved and what the outcome of the investigations were around the world, and I'm going to tell you right now, there is statistically nothing bearing out what these folks are saying with their rhetoric. Sure. And Matt says something here, Diana. He says, statistically proven fatherless homes are a big contributing factor to the amount of people in jail and prison. Love the message the movie Courageous gives on this. All right, I got a couple more questions for you, Diana. I know we're getting close to your out time, so I want to be respectful. But to your point, because I think you said it very succinctly, you know, the tenet of law enforcement is to enforce the law, you know, without passion or prejudice. That's what we do. I say that because I want to continually do everything I can to combat the idea that they're in some way there to protect and serve. That may happen. They may protect and may serve, but understand the primary reason we have police officers is to enforce the laws. If you don't like the laws, like you said, Diana, get involved with the legislature. If you love the laws, then follow them. Simple as that. This defund the police movement, it's been gaining steam. Where the heck is all this stuff going?
Oh, well, your guess is as good as mine. It's like, you know, it's like, I guess it's probably more a horror movie, but I feel like we're just like in the middle of a movie. I feel like, you know, what's the next chapter going to bring? I mean, we've had murder warrants, we've had, you can go down the list of what 2020 has brought, the riots, the pandemic, things like that. But really, you know, for the Second Amendment, I think that 2020 has really opened a lot of people's eyes. There are an estimated 5 million brand new gun owners. So people understand that the government isn't going to protect them. And it's kind of funny because the same people that have been telling us to give up our guns and the police will protect you are the same ones that are saying defund the police. So it's pretty, incongruent to what, if you have a brain at all, it's like, this doesn't add up. So hopefully people will register, they will vote, and we will stand strong as to trying to take back our school systems, our city councils, our state and our federal legislators.
Yeah, that's a great point. And somebody in the comments says Dianna is a great American and a great leader. She needs to run for office for sure.
I'll find somebody else that's better suited.
I want to your point, though, I think you're right. The argument that the left is making is really a non sequitur if you think about it, because it's like, well, give up your guns because police will protect you, but also police are evil and racist. It's like, wait a minute. So I'm going to give up my gun for an evil racist to protect me? That doesn't make any sense, does it?
Yeah.
And then to add on top of that, like you said, Dianna, now it's oh, by the way, we're going to defund those evil racists, the people that don't show them have guns. We're going to defund them, but give up your guns anyway.
Yeah, I saw Minneapolis City Council is kind of worried about the spike in crime.
Yeah, you think? Dianna, final question, then I'll give you your final thoughts here. There's talk of a second Civil War. You know, I've heard that for the last probably year. At first, it seemed like a little bit of hyperbole, but having spent about 10 years reading everything I could on the Civil War, of course, I'm a Southerner, if you couldn't tell by the accent. All my family were in both sides of the Civil War. So I've wanted to research that as much as I could. Now, as we move through 2020, it doesn't seem so hyperbolic. And I would tell you that, in my opinion, Dianna, I think that this is a dry run for what's going to happen in 2021, because we still have all these court cases. Kyle Rittenhouse is going to go to court. He's probably going to be let off. Jacob Blake is, probably going to be found guilty. His officers are going to be acquitted. Officer Rolfe down in Atlanta. So all these court cases are going to go down. I think we're going to see cities burn again. And my fear is that this talk of Civil War, in some degree, of course, it won't be massed armies marching across a field per se, but it could be some sort of low intensity conflict. What do you think?
Well, I definitely think, here's my concern on the patriotism side. I mean, people have soccer games to go to and dance recitals, and they really can't be bothered with saving the country. So I think that we have been boiled so long that it's going to have to get a lot worse before we collectively as patriots rise back up. Hopefully it won't be too late, but think about the people in the Civil War. They, look at Robert E. Lee. I mean, he left Arlington, he left the house and never to return. I think it was 1973 that the government actually paid his family for the land that they took. They took it. That's a great story too. If anybody's ever gone to Washington, D.C., Arlington is one of my favorite places, but there's so much drama there. I mean, they went and took his house and started planting dead people there because to spite him and that he could never come back to his home. So it was, it's a sidebar.
No, it's a great sidebar.
So I don't know where it's going. But I definitely know that patriots are going to have to. And my concern is that we get so censored on Facebook that we can't organize. So you better start organizing before it completely cuts off. At least make sure you have your local, because that's where it's going to be. Your local community of finding out who is like-minded and who can go support the cause. There was a friend of mine down in Kentucky who's doing just exactly that. And I'm thinking that that's popping up here and there, but just think locally, because that's where you are and that's where you can affect the most change. So make sure you find out who your local patriots are and get connected to them, because you're going to need to find medics and communications and all sorts of details. But we can go in, and my idea would be to just possibly, reinforce police, just go in with a party of 10 and say, here, I'm here to help you. How can we help you? But that's the molecular level that we're talking about, as far as I can see us moving to whatever is coming.
Yeah. Well, Dianna, thank you so much. Any final comments before you get on with your day?
Yeah, I wanted to tell everybody about the Ambassador Academy. So that's something that Ryan and I started a couple of years ago. And like I said, when I started in this space, this was just a hobby. But then I started getting media requests and co-hosting on Shooting Gallery and things like that. And I remember asking Michael Bain, I was like, I need help. I need practice. I suck at this. And he's like, oh, no, you're doing great. And I was like, no, I really want to be better. And so I've never taken any kind of training like that. And I thought, you know what, we can do that, because I know there are people like me that are either sponsored shooters or want to be sponsored or want to just be better communicators. And really the Ambassador Academy is basically an all-inclusive 5-day training facility down in Orlando, Florida. So we refer to it as Tactical Disneyland. It's WOFT, WOFT on Instagram, and he's building. It was a secret place for the longest time. I was like, can you let me bring Michael Bain here and tell everybody about it? Because this is the most awesome place ever. And it took me about 4 years to make the transition for him to open it up. His family lives there, so he was very protective about it, and it was a private deal. So he is going to be opening the doors to the public, kinda. You have to have a background check and all sorts of jump through some hoops to get to go. But the Ambassador Academy is held there. So and his deal at Tactical Disneyland is scenario training. He has a coffee shop, Liberal Cheers Coffee Shop, that it looks like a real coffee shop. I mean, it is decked out with, the countertop, just the wood. It just looks amazing. And an observation deck, and probably close to 50, 60 UTM guns. So large scale mass scenarios that you can really kind of put the rubber to the road when it comes to training. So you get a little bit of that, but we also, the Ambassador Academy. It is is that you or me?
It's me.
It is we go over things that we need in our space. So whether it be social media, strategy and analytics, or filming and editing, hostile communications. I mean, this is a friendly communication, which you need to practice these kind of interviews too. But then there's hostile comms, with basically focused on the Second Amendment. So how do you answer, why does anybody need an AR-15? We can practice those things. We have professional photographers, and just put it all together. There's a little bit of live fire based on whatever we're around. I put it in front of USPSA multi-gun nationals. So 3 gunners could come and then just go straight to the match. But we can provide that kind of training. It's basically a media training. And we can provide that for companies specifically or discipline specifically. If a long range class, we can, do it long range focused, stuff like that. So the Ambassador Academy right now lives on pro3gunner.com, pro3gunner.com. And our next class won't be until 2021. And we don't even have it on the calendar yet, because we don't know what 2021 is going to bring.
Well, Dianna, thank you so much for coming on the show today, and thank you for being the great patriot that you are. Thank you for your years of service to your community, and thank you for coming on the show. I just can't thank you enough for everything that you're doing.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate the time.
All right, guys and gals, thanks for tuning in. Please like and share, and remember, the fight is coming. Be ready.